time for another double shot, and this time we're taking on Joe Biden. The Biden White House made an announcement this week saying, hey, all you people who don't want to pay back the student loans that you took out voluntarily and agreed to pay back, we're going to pay off everything that you owe. And it has nothing to do with the fact that the Biden administration is dealing with a little bit of a youth voter problem going into this re-election because they are leaking votes like nobody.
Do you think the timing of this seems at all questionable? Because I heard that it's supposed to.
What I just said was a clear hint of the direction
That's what you think?
going.
So this is supposed to kick in the fall, right?
So maybe. Here's the deal. They haven't finalized the plan, so we don't actually know what it looks like. Number two, it hasn't gone through any sort of legal scrutiny, which you know it's going to.
And the last time they tried to do this, they were hopefully going to cancel it for like 40 million borrowers, and the Supreme Court said, no, thank you.
So assuming maybe they addressed some of that, but they probably didn't address all of it because they don't actually intend to go through with this. This is just to make these promises that they're not going to keep and blame Republicans.
This is an empty campaign promise?
100%. You might not even get a plan in place by November.
I don't know about that.
There's the timeline might not even happen until after the election, so it won't be legitimate unless it's really fast-tracked. But since when has the government fast-tracked anything?
I saw Vice President Kamala Harris giving a speech about this. She was sitting in front of a giant screen, and in the back it said, canceling student debt, Vice President Kamala Harris.
It's almost like a campaign ad.
A skeptical person would think that.
Yeah.
A person who doesn't trust government. I'm not one of those people. I trust them.
That's all he talks about all day
is how much I trust government.
Lets him, really feel comfortable and confident with the direction of his life.
Totally. So what she was saying, though, which I found kind of interesting, she was saying that for people who have been paying off their student loans for 20 years for undergrads and then 25 years for people with advanced degrees, so those are people like doctors and lawyers, magicians, whatever. These people, no matter how much you make, it will be, you will have it just repaid.
It is so
if somebody has like
ludicrous.
$300,000 in student loans, a couple who make $900,000 a year because they're both fancy doctors and they've just been taking the slow boat and paying their student loans very slowly, then
I love the idea that person that you're talking about
exists,
hasn't paid
waiting
after 25 years, right? That they're making a lot of money and they're paying the absolute minimum, which is the worst way to pay off any debt. You always put as much as you can, do the Dave Ramsey snowball, basically.
Yeah,
put as much as you can.
And then pay off the interest.
Yes. Yeah. And this idea, I'm just going to do the $25 a month. Well, that's why you're still paying it off, dum-dum. And number two, by the way, there are people who didn't choose to go to college. They became, technical experts in plumbing or electrician. They maybe took on a trade school.
Opened up an auto shop and they now have employees.
And now you're saying they have to pay for you and your gender studies degree from Evergreen College. What value do you even bring to society? None whatsoever. And now we're paying for that?
Here's an interesting thing, too. I saw somebody on the interwebs. They posed a question I thought was a pretty good one. And they said, listen, why are we zeroing in on this group of people, many of whom, I think 40% of all student loan debt is held by people with advanced degrees. So those are people who have like pretty good jobs.
Or should have pretty good jobs.
In
jobs.
Fairness. Yeah, or should have pretty good jobs. There's a lot of dum-dums out there. And they were saying that, so that's held by people with like advanced degrees. This guy on the internet pointed out, he goes, people get cancer. That not only does it devastate a family, but financially it devastates them. On average, it generally leaves people with $10,000 worth of medical debt.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we step in and pay off those bills? Like, I think everybody else could get behind that. If you're just going to be paying off people's bills, I would rather pay off a cancer family's
the problem
bills.
is just begets that over and over and over again.
No, I know. It doesn't work in either situation. I'm just saying that, like,
and they're just going to look at this and say, well, why don't you pay for this or that? Why don't you pay my rent? You all talk about how housing is a human right? At some point, you do have to pull it back, but I think that that's ultimately the goal, which is, talk about how many people will say just what you just said. That's an actual plan that folks are pushing.
Yeah.
And the problem I have is, just at least on the...
I thought it sounded pretty good.
Many problems. The problem that I have just on the student loan debt, did you have student loan debt? Because I had some. I didn't have a ton, but I had some. I paid it back.
Yeah, I graduated in 2007. I got that 6-month letter that says, all right, now you have 6 months to go find a job, and then we expect you to start paying this back. 6 months later, I started getting bills. I have to pay it back. took me like maybe 6-7 years. I mean, I got married, and then my wife and I were like, we don't want to have the student loan debt hanging over our heads for our entire lives. So we did all the extra stuff to pay it back, and we finally got it paid back. And that's just the way it.
Well, because you're responsible. You're not a deadbeat like.
Well, I didn't know that they were going to step in and say like, "Hey, Jake, if you just like hold on to this debt somehow, then we'll just wipe it away for you."
I think for the last couple of years, that's what people were counting on, and that's why they didn't pay.
And that's what they're going to get.
And now they're going to get it. Kind of smart. So good on you. You're taking my tax dollars.
Good move. Congrats.